And they're despairing because they're too inward looking. They're not looking to God. They're not looking to Our Lady. There are graces in abundance. If we just look back for a moment and look at the apparitions to St. Catherine Labore, who asked Our Lady, what are all these colored lights coming out of your hands? And she said, they're all the graces that nobody asks for.
Hello and welcome back to HLI Ireland's Let's Talk. This is the weekly show that looks at all things life, faith and family through a Catholic lens. You're joining us from Ireland here again this week, and we are continuing with our theme, Our Lady, Our Mother, Our Queen. Now, did I introduce myself? I can't remember. My name is Lisa O'Hare and I'm always privileged to be with you here again. Thank you for joining us. So today we are continuing the theme, and I am really privileged to have a very, very special guest with us today. We have Dr. William Thomas, who is a Roman Catholic theologian from Galway. He is the director of the Pope John Paul Institute of Marian Studies, and he has studied metaphysics and philosophy and received a doctorate in sacred theology. This is a very learned man. And not only that, he served as English secretary to the Vicar of Vatican City, and he is the custodian of sacred relics of St. John Paul II. He has written several books, not only several, but he tells me 35 books and counting so far. So this is a really renowned expert on Our Lady, and I'm delighted to welcome him here. Dr. William, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So you come all the way from Galway. I want to just begin by just getting a little background, how that you found yourself in the position that you found yourself and where this beautiful devotion to Our Lady began.
Well, I was brought up as an orphan by the Sisters of Mercy and then by the Sisters of Charity. And when I went to work for the Holy See, I remember Pope John Paul asked me what my childhood was like. And I told him about the Sisters of Mercy and the Sisters of Charity. And he said to me, well, what are they like? And I said, well, I found out the Sisters of Mercy had no charity and the Sisters of Charity had no mercy. And so I suppose that's where the foundation of my faith came from, is, you know, as a young child, as a young boy, going to Mass every day and, you know, kneeling down in the evening and praying the rosary. And people told me throughout my life, God loved me. I didn't know in what way or shape. So I decided to pursue it and to find, was he really up there somewhere in the clouds with a ginormous telescope looking at me? Or can God be found in other places? And so I went to school in Switzerland. I found it a very sterile sort of environment. It wasn't very Catholic, culturally, at least Ireland was. But then later I went to study in America, and I studied in University of Albuquerque and the Western Kentucky University before I ended up in Rome. And that was purely by fluke, if you want. I met the right man at the right place at the right time. I said, you should go to Rome and I will help you. And so I ended up in Rome. I studied at the Angelicum, at the Gregoriana, at the Antonianum. So there are 3 universities. I spent about 13 years in study. I studied about 8 hours per day. And I lived right across the road from Santa Maria Maggiore, which is one of those great churches dedicated to Our Lady, the major Marian shrine of the Catholic Church, if you want. So I suppose from there, a dependency on Mary, Mother of the Church, Mother of God, the Theotokos, you know, dependency on prayer, that everything would work out. Everything would work out for good. And so I entrusted myself to her and began to study and to write about her. I wrote a book called Introduction to Mariology, which is it's a simple introduction to the theology of Mary. And in there, for the first time in the history of the church, I put together a type of a credo what it is about Mary we ought to believe, are bound to believe. For example, the 4 Marian dogmas, the Theotokos, she is the mother of God, the perpetual virginity, her immaculate conception, and her assumption, body and soul, into heaven, along with the many titles the church has given to her. And then subsequently I wrote, as you said, over 35. This one is on the mystics of the Virgin Mary, and it has to do with those people she appeared to down through the ages. And then, of course, finally, I've written this one. These are all available on Kindle as well. So soft copy and hard copy books dedicated to Our Lady.
Wow, amazing. Gosh, I mean, the level of study that you've gone to, and obviously the depth of research and the depth of knowledge that you have on Our Lady is really, really inspiring. So, I mean, for people that, for the Irish people, generally, we are known for our love of Our Lady. There's a great soft spot for Our Lady here. You know, we have the tradition of the rosary. We have the tradition, you know, if anyone goes around the roads, particularly in County Mayo, you'll see statues to Our Lady in gardens and all the rest of it. Can you explain, I mean, I know you mentioned those credos, why she is so important to the church? And maybe we have some listeners here who aren't Catholic. Maybe you could address some of the misunderstandings that people might have of her, that we worship her, or whatever else.
Yeah, well, this is an old, let's say, argument that is thrown out from time to time by people who don't hold on the importance of Mary, who is venerated by Catholics. She's not adored by Catholics. That is latria, it's reserved to God himself. The veneration we have for Mary is called hyperdulia, as opposed to hyperdulia is a high veneration, if you want, as opposed to protodulia, which is reserved to Saint Joseph, is the first one after Mary that we owe veneration to. And then finally, we have dulia, the sort of reverence and devotion that we should show to the saints of God, who are now in heaven before the Divine Majesty. Mary is very important in the economy of salvation, if you want to call it that, simply because she is the mother of Christ. The Council of Ephesus in 431 proclaimed that she was the Theotokos, the greatest title of the 6,200 titles, the official titles that she has. This is the greatest title, Theotokos. She is the mother of God. Now, the fact of it is, it's a dogma of the faith which we are bound to believe. She is the one who said the yes to God, a fiat, an eternal fiat. In other words, when she said yes to freedom, yes to God, in perpetuum. There was never a moment where there was any doubt. She was the one that was predestined. In my book in Mariology, Introduction to Mariology, I follow her right from Genesis 3:15 all the way through the typologies of the 37 matriarchs, of which there are, say, 15 to 17 of them are called major matriarchs. And they all represent in some way Mary. And I bring the chapter to a close in the New Testament, where we speak about her in the Gospels. And there's not much written about her. Certainly her Magnificat, Magnificat anima mea Domino, is her soul magnifies the Lord. It doesn't magnify herself. And the Almighty has looked upon her in her humility, in her lowliness. So she proclaims her humility. She proclaims that she is focused only on God and to do God's will in perfection. So after, let's say, the hypostasis, the hypostatic union of Christ, she is the greatest of all of God's creations. And in fact, many theologians would hold that the world was created for her in some way, and that God loves her and can refuse her nothing. She is an immense figure in the life of God, even though she's, a creature, but nevertheless, she is the one who has become the messenger of God in the modern world. She is the one that comes to us in many of the Marian shrines. I'm writing the 4th volume of a compendium of authentic Marian shrines of the world. These are quite big volumes. They're already in the papal apartments. They're quite heavy, and you can see them there. 600 pages in each volume that shows you the authentic shrines of the world and what they're about. So it's an immense amount of work, and it shows the importance of Mary down through the ages, how she intervenes, how she comes to us to guide us, direct us, and so on and so forth.
Wow, I hope everyone's got their pens and papers out here, because I don't think they expected to learn quite so much in this episode as you're giving us. It's incredible. It's so funny because my instinct keeps wanting to call you father, because you almost expect someone with this kind of immense amount of knowledge as maybe an ordained priest, but here you are as a layman with such an incredible amount of knowledge. So if I call you Father William, maybe you'll have to forgive me in this episode. That's
okay. I call you sister.
There you go. So William, I'd love to explore. So obviously you've such an incredible intellect and such an incredible academic background to it. I'd love to hear if you had a wee personal story. How do you like to look on Our Lady? You know, she has so many titles. She's Mother, she's Queen, she's Ark of the Covenant, she's, Cause of Our Joy. You can go through the litany. Just as a wee personal one, how do you look at her, or does that change depending on what challenges you're going through or what stage of life you're at?
Well, one of the great admonitions of Fatima is to pray the rosary every day. When we pray the rosary every day, we receive what are known as signal graces from Our Lady. These graces will be for our protection from all danger and every evil. And I think that, we can make consecrations to her, what they call in Italian affidamento, entrustment to her of ourselves. It can be done every day. It can be done once a month. It can be done on major Marian feast days, whatever. But in so doing, we become, let's say, adopted sons. We establish a friendship with Mary. We become aware of her virtues and the graces that are there for the asking. And so we all need to have extraordinary graces to be able to go through life, the difficult challenges of today, a world of confusion, a world of ambiguity, a world that lacks clarity in teaching, a church that is somewhat silent in the midst of the great problems and that are spewed out by mass media. The battle for the truth is always there. But when one has this great Marian devotion, she will not let us down. She will be the one that will guide us to Christ, guide us through grace, give us that grace of discernment. When we hear a story, we might be able to say, well, this isn't true, or this can't be true, or whatever. And, these are the sort of things that I look to Our Lady for in these kind of prayers, popular piety, devotions, consecrations, and, writing about her. I noticed that I'm a member of the Pontifical Marian Academy. When I presented the first 3 volumes of the compendium series of the authentic Marian shrines of the world, which are very interesting, nobody had them. Even the Pope didn't have them. And so now they're in the papal library, and they're a reference point. And I'm working on volume 4, which I hope to have finished this year. So it's 600 pages, like climbing Mount Everest with no boots on, you get so far and you slide again,
Yeah. Well, I can't understand, because I have no idea what it is to write a book, let alone write something as comprehensive and incredible as that. So I can't nod knowingly, because I have really no idea. But I want to just pick up a point there. You mentioned about Our Lady of Fatima, and you mentioned the rosary. So tomorrow is the feast of Our Lady of Fatima, the 13th of May. My daughter's just back from a pilgrimage to Fatima, so I've started really looking into it and reading our Lucia's sister, or Blessed Lucia's memoirs, and they've just a new appreciation for it and a new interest and what's the word, sort of a keenness to hear more about it. So I'd love to hear from you about the feast, or sorry, about the apparitions at Fatima and why they were so important to the whole church and why they're so important to us today.
Yeah, well, the apparitions at Fatima include also the apparitions at Pontevedra in Spain and Tui, and the 6 with the 3 children at the Cova de Area, and the 7th one with Lucia on her own after Francisco and Jacinta died. And they also include the 3 apparitions of the angel. So in total, you're looking at 13 apparitions rather than 6. So some of these apparitions were preparatory in forming the children as mystics, if you want, with the prayers of sacrifice, with the prayers to the Most Blessed Trinity, with prayers of offering themselves, and so on and so forth. But basically, Fatima is the most dramatic and most urgent of all the Marian apparitions to date. In that, for the first time, we see how humanity stands before God, with the message from Our Lady that God is already too much offended by man's sins. And therefore, there's a call to conversion. In fact, there are 20 appeals of Fatima. First of all, the call to believe, because the world is turning away from God. They're in open rebellion against God. They're in open rebellion against the church. They're in open rebellion against the sacraments. So the call of Fatima, the first call, the call to believe, is most important as atheism takes hold. The second call is the call to adore, the call to adoration. Because we believe in God, we adore him. And this is proper. This is what we call the jus divinum, the right relationship with God. And thirdly, the call to hope. We live in a world of despair at the moment. Many people are despairing from this virtue of hope, which is very sad. And they're despairing because they're too inward looking. They're not looking to God. They're not looking to Our Lady. There are graces in abundance. If we just look back for a moment and look at the apparitions to St. Catherine Labore, who asked Our Lady, what are all these colored lights coming out of your hands? And she said, they're all the graces that nobody asks for. So, you know, being somewhat of a mendicant, like the Dominicans, being a beggar, I beg Our Lady for all the graces that nobody wants. I said, I'll pick up the scraps or whatever they are. But these graces are incredible because they provide lucidity of soul. They provide an interior stillness, a peace that the world cannot give. And in that sanctuary of yourself, the inner sanctorum that Teresa of Avila talks about in the interior castle, you can find Christ and you become configured to him. Despite human weakness, despite it, you still advance towards a life of sanctity with the desire, not only to be a saint, but for martyrdom itself. And martyrdom can come in many forms. Unlike other Marian apparitions, is the most urgent. As I said, there are 20 appeals of Our Lady to humanity, to learn to do good, to imitate her virtues, of which we have an obligation to do. Don't forget that Fatima is the school of Mary. It's the school of holiness. And when we read about the ins and outs of not only Lucia's life, her memoirs and so on, but we all have a mission. We're all commissioned by God through our baptism to be somebody, to do something, no matter how small it is. As long as we do it with love of neighbor, which is the third call of Fatima, the call to love one another, to believe, to adore, to hope, and to love, the fourth call. Then I think that is the ultimate question, as many theologians would have said in the past, that we are called to be vessels of love of fellow man. We know on Holy Thursday we were given the new mandate, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. This is why it's called Maundy Thursday. Maundy coming from mandatum, a new command. I give you a new command, love one another. Our Lady helps us to do that. She helps us, she gives us the grace to be able to see those who are in need, those who are despairing, those who need a word of comfort. And so the mission, like St. Crispin of Viterbo, he was beatified, and somebody said, why was he beatified? Well, simply the Positio said he was beatified because of his heroic availability. And so even that is utter simplicity. He was always available to those who needed someone to talk to, someone to advise, someone to pray for, and so on. So this heroic availability is a mission to be available for others, to be available to the church, to offer one's life, because in giving, we receive. In giving, we discover who we are.
Wow, I love that heroic availability, because I think that's one of the things that the devil wants to take from us, because if he's always distracting us, we're never available to God, we're never tuned in, and like that's a very low bar just to be available to him. I mean, that's the first thing he's asking is availability, and that's where a lot of us are failing outright right now. Yes,
but again, we can be available for a holy hour. We can. I produced a book only yesterday. It's still hot off the press. It's called the Fatima Association of Adoration and Reparation. I think it's just a couple of euros, and it gives you the dramatic prayers of reparation, namely the divine praises. It gives you the memorare, it gives you the holy hour. It's designed to do a holy hour, and in that holy hour, as our Lord said, could you not watch 1 hour? We're given an opportunity to place our petitions before him and to pray, not only for ourselves, but for others and for the church and for vocations. I think it's important to stress at this point that we're not all called to the priesthood. There are 4 vocations in the church. And in the order of importance, the married life is the first one, from which everything comes. The church itself comes from the married life, from vocations to the married life. So that's an important. Secondly, the call to the singular life. Some people think because you're single, you're odd. It may be a vocation to be single. It may be a vocation to be available, that heroic availability that we talk about, available for God, to be able to do the works of God. It's not about being single just to have all the time in the world to do your hair or your mascara or your lipstick or matching high heels with handbags or whatever it is. That's not what it's about. The third vocation then is to the religious life. And not everyone is called to that. People in large families oftentimes are the most suitable candidates. And then finally, the priesthood. So there's a plethora of vocations, even within the vocation, as we see from Teresa of Lisieux. She is reading the letter to the Hebrews and discovers that some are called to be apostles, others are called to be preachers and teachers, and others are called to be this and that. And so she decides, even though she was cloistered Carmelite nun, she said, I will be love in the heart of the church. And so that was another vocation for her. We see the same with Elizabeth of the Trinity in Dijon, and with many, many others. There's a vocation within a vocation, and this is grace building on grace, by the way. This is the evidence of grace that builds on nature, and grace builds on grace. So, to be a saint is a determination. It's not something like we wander through life as we wander through the fog and we come out the other side and there are the pearly gates of heaven. No, you have to be determined to get there. And that determination requires prayer and study. And Pope John Paul often said, a good theologian is always on his knees. And so, you'll find that many good theologians would be men of prayer and men focused on God. Yeah.
Indeed. And I mean, you're speaking about vocations. I know our Irish bishops have launched the year for prayer for vocations here in Ireland. Would you see Our Lady as key to that? Because obviously she's the mother of the church. She's the mother of priests and a great Marian devotion, both for the young men who are called to priesthood, but also for all of us to be able to, you said, to tap into those graces to pour out so that we can be blessed in abundance with men who'll bring Jesus into the church and through the Eucharist.
Yes, but you see, again, in praying for vocations, are the bishops just focusing on vocations to the priesthood, or to the religious life, or to the singular life, or to the married life? You see, the family needs support in the modern world. The family itself is under attack. And therefore, I think the bishop should be more gracious in praying for all vocations. And in particular, if they wish, vocations to the priesthood. But vocations to the priesthood are a gift of self, of course, and the bishops have to be the role models. Like any person, Our Lady certainly is a role model of prayer and of somebody who says fiat to God all the time, and that can be our answer. But the bishops themselves have to be men of courage and men of prayer, rather than be managers and administrators, because nobody is inspired by that acumen. It's important that they be pastors. They speak out on moral issues, on issues of faith, on issues that pertain the ever increasing burden on the family and taxation, in injustices committed by the state. The silence of the bishops today is deafening. They need to speak out. If they're going to go for vocations to the priesthood, it's not sufficient that they remain in the status quo that they're in. They need to change. And in that change will come the vocations, when they are seen as the moral leaders like Bishop von Galen or Bishop William Ep2 from Győr in Hungary, where the Irish Madonna is venerated. And Bishop von Galen, who was that great man. Hitler himself said he wasn't afraid of God, or he wasn't afraid of the devil, but he was terrified of Bishop von Galen. And that's the way the government in Ireland should be. They should be terrified of the moral authority that the bishops have. They are the successors of the apostles. If they maintain the status quo, they won't get the vocations that they think they're going to get.
Amen. That's strong words, strong words. William, I'm delighted to hear we want lots of that passion, because I think you're kind of, intimating something like that. We've got to have passionate leaders. We've got to have people who are willing to lay down their lives and willing to stand up. And, I can't remember which book I read it in, but it talks about Our Lady with her boots on, and it comes, I think, from, the Legion of Mary, and that idea that, what is the Legion of Mary? One that the battle, who is she that comes forth, as the morning star, terrible as an army set in battle array. That's Our Lady. She isn't just the pretty wallflower that just wants to sit on your mantelpiece and look pretty.
Yeah, you see, the other thing about it is, and you hit the nail on the head, the passion has gone out of the church. The passion for Christ, the passion for Mary. Don't forget, before the Second Vatican Council, we had confraternities of Mary and archconfraternities of Mary. They've all died out. Mm-hmm. It's time that Catholic Ireland resurrect itself. But they need strong leadership. They need good, strong bishops. And if I was to address the bishops, I would have very strong words to say about their performance in the last number of years. The closing of the churches, for example, while the supermarkets remained open. Mm-hmm. I think it was somewhat despicable. And I've written to them. And I said, if you don't want to be a bishop, stand aside. Let good men come in and be bishops and lead the church. It's about leadership. It's about pastoral leadership. It's about leadership in the faith, leadership in the morality of the country, which is going down the tubes. And so we need to speak out on these moral issues and tell the government that euthanasia is not up for discussion, nor is abortion. It shouldn't happen, and it should change for the better.
Well, we're just coming towards the end of the show, and I want to capture this passion, but I also want to finish on huge amount of hope. We always try to do that here at HLI Ireland. I just want to capture, I know this is going to be something we could talk about for hours, but Our Lady of Knock, HLI Ireland, our head office is Knock. It is the spiritual centre of all the work that we do. Can you just finish with a couple of words about why that apparition was so important, what it means to the laity, why St. John, St. Joseph, and the Lamb of God? Can you just finish off with just your insights into the apparition at Knock before we close?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked the question, because in the third compendium, volume 3 of the compendium series, I put the new mosaic of the apparition at Knock on the front cover, and I spend a lot of time explaining Knock by understanding it in the light of faith, and again with the grace Our Lady gave me. Now, I think the problem with Knock is that they only look at a historical dimension, in that they refer back to St. John the Evangelist and to St. Joseph and so on, all of those things. But there's a historical story behind it, which is complex, which we don't have the time. We could do another program on Knock. But just to say, I looked at it from a different point of view, the prophetic point of view, because most Marian apparitions, if not all, have that prophetic dimension. And the prophetic dimension has never been told, but you will find it in the compendium. And basically, it wasn't about something that had happened. It was about something that was to happen at some point in the future.
Wow. Can you give us a wee quick insight into what you got there?
Well,
you can't leave us there.
Okay, so the apparition happened in 1879. And the greatest event since the arrival of St. Patrick happened in 1979 with the arrival of Pope St. John Paul II. And that is linked to the apparition of Fatima.
Brilliant.
Or to the apparition of Knock, beg your pardon.
Brilliant. Well, folks, there you go. I hope the appetite is whetted. You're all going to be jumping on to get William's books now. So we can get your books where exactly?
On Amazon. Just put in William A. Thomas Catholic books. I think they'll give you a list.
There you go, folks. That's your homework for this month of May, is to brush up on these apparitions, find out the prophetic dimension of Knock, look into the reparation dimension of Fatima. I think that is key. Tomorrow is the feast of Our Lady of Fatima. We really want to be praying more and exploring the themes that William talked about: to believe, to adore, to hope, and to love. They're very simple. Our Lady is just the queen of simplicity. She doesn't make things difficult for us. She makes them so simple. And the reparation that we can do, I love the prayer that every small thing we do, and I've been trying to do it all the time when I've got a dirty nappy to change, I'm saying, I'm doing this, Lord, for love of you, for the conversion of sinners, and in reparation for the offences against the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And it's such a simple prayer, and you can do it for everything, whether you're picking something off the floor, changing a nappy, quelling an argument, whatever it is that you don't want to do. That is something that we can do and we can offer up. You've given us so much to think about, William. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Maybe we'll do a series of shows. Maybe we'll get you down to Knock someday and get you to travel across from Galway to Knock and give us a talk on the whole apparition there.
Maybe.
You never know. You never know. Well, thanks a million. And thank you, folks, for joining us. Yeah, thank you, William. I'm just going to wrap up to say to thank you, the viewer, for taking the time to watch and to listen. We're always encouraging you to like, to share, to comment on what you're hearing. Let us know what you're feeling, what Our Lady and what our Lord has inspired in you. It's great to get that feedback, to know that this fire is spreading. If there's any questions that you have, we'll pass them on to William. And we want to continue the journey. Next week, we'll be joined by Patrick and Crystal and the team. And you'll hear a lot more of the information that we're doing at HLI Ireland in order to honour Our Lady and to spread the devotion to her, and indeed the whole idea of reparation. So thank you, William. Thank you to the viewers. Please remember that we at HLI Ireland are working and praying for an Ireland where God is first, life is sacred, and the family is cherished. Until next time, God bless.